R-O-L-A-I-D-S.
Rolaids spells relief. Unbeatable.
Good morning, all, and welcome to a new week.
4, 3.
This is an NBC News special report.
Iranian students have held 59 Americans hostage at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran.
An option pass. Touchdown, Ron Smith. Bradshaw firing downfield. It's a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
Students wearing an American flag on the steps of the embassy.
Remaining demonstrators in Tehran have overrun the American embassy and now appear in control of American lives.
I want to talk to you right now about a fundamental threat to American democracy.
In 1979, the United States had been through a couple of bracing experiences. The war in Vietnam had ended catastrophically. Watergate had occurred. There were a cascading series of oil crises. That was a kind of a bruising period for the collective American ego.
NFL games at that time served the same purpose that they've served for many years, which is escape. What was different about that time of the late 70s going into the 80s, that it was an escape for the country. The steel industry was taking a big hit at that time, and the lifelong Pittsburghers were just kind of waiting and needing something good to happen. And what was really good was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
With a stacked roster of future Hall of Famers, the Pittsburgh Steelers had won 3 championships in a 5-year span. They epitomized the dynamic NFL in the late 1970s, a league brimming with talent and showmanship.
Touchdown, Los Angeles.
Every Sunday on television, the league captivated viewers across America. And for many, the game was more than just a few hours' entertainment.
Growing up in Wisconsin, it's actually in the blood. It was what you did on Sunday. You watched Packer football.
At the 4-yard line of Green Bay.
You went out and played and pretended that you were a running back for the Packers, that you were running over the Bears and the Vikings and the Lions.
We were always doing our flag football. Got a little tough out there sometimes.
It's just what we did all the time. And I grew up just assuming that I would be an NFL player someday. I just couldn't understand why I couldn't be if other guys were.
Living in a small community of Crockle, Missouri, which was a population of 50, and that was dogs and cats included. Football was, you were king of the school if you wore a jersey. Practice was about teamwork. You depend on each other. If you had a block, if you didn't block, the running back couldn't get in there. That teamwork of sports got me interested and intrigued the military.
It is my privilege to welcome you.
Until they graduated, they didn't know where they were going to be assigned. The graduation speech, it was all about how the embassy in Iran had been overrun by students, and that the host government came in and shut everything down. The whole entire graduation speech was about that this would never be allowed to happen again. Rocky informs me, I've gotten my duties and I'm going to Iran. And I was just like, you have got to be kidding me.
Iran was a faraway, turbulent spot on the map, little known to most Americans. But many Iranians were wary of the power of the United States.
The average Iranian, there was a great belief that the United States was manipulating events inside of Iran and had been for a long time. And there was some truth to that view. The Shah was seen as a puppet of the United States government.
The growing protest against the ruling Shah turned the capital, Tehran, into a powder keg. A volatile post for embassy staffers and a group of new Marines in autumn 1979.
Looked to me like there was a riot in the airport. We got in an armored van. It's hard to articulate the chaos because people weren't even obeying traffic signals. It was just a complete breakdown of society.
The young soldiers were thrust into a nation of 36 million in the midst of a violent revolution. Hundreds of thousands marched into Tehran streets, protesting the Shah's oppressive regime.
The opposition facing him were a bunch of religious types operating mostly out of the mosques. The assumption was that the Shah was quite capable of handling this. The smart money said that he was. The smart money was wrong.
On January 16, 1979, the Shah fled Iran, replaced by the formidable Ayatollah Khomeini.
The homecoming of Ayatollah Khomeini.
We'll support Ayatollah Khomeini 100% from now on from on.
The revolutionary leader blamed U.S. influence for Iran's troubles, stoking the fires of anti-American sentiment. Then the Shah revealed he was dying of cancer and asked for medical treatment in the United States.
The anger about the United States and all was at a very, very high pitch. And it was clear that bringing the Shah into the United States would set something off. So Jimmy Carter had a meeting in the Oval Office with his top advisors. They went around the room. Every single one of Carter's advisors said, we really got to bring him in. We can't let the Shah just die out there. And Jimmy Carter looked around the room and he said, okay, he said, I hear what you're saying, but what are you guys going to tell me when they take our people hostage in Iran?
Being a Marine in a foreign country, everything you did, you had to do on a compound. We burned off a lot of steam by playing football. Here we are playing football. You could hear the prayer going off in the loud intercom of the city. It reminded me of how far away from home you were. Little did you realize that the next day your life would be nothing but normal ever again.
November 4th, 1979 began as just one more day with the daily demonstrations.
The thing I remember most is how loud it was. There were just thousands of people running around. Everyone was shouting. People were running up to me, shaking their fists at me, spitting at me, "Death to America."
They were probably 1.5 million, 2 million people on the streets. You could actually feel the rumble in the earth, and they were reaching through that gate. I thought they were going to just rip us to shreds.
The first thing that we heard from the communication center was thousands of Iranians coming over the walls and through the doors. Our charge said, don't use tear gas, don't do anything to provoke them. They just kept falling back and falling back.
We have an ancient principle of diplomatic immunity. Our embassies, they're supposed to be treated as our territory. And diplomatic immunity is a pretty sacred, profound principle in international affairs. They were revolutionaries, and they weren't listening to the law or principles. They weren't negotiating. They were just slamming it to us.
Back in Oak Creek, Wisconsin on South 20th Street that Sunday morning, people are just coming home from church in the U.S. It's then time to go into the family room and watch Packer football that Sunday afternoon.
40, 35, he's still in his feet at the 30-yard line, all the way down.
They interrupt the Packer game, which it better be big news. It was big news.
We begin now with an on-the-scene account by the one American.
My recollection was being told by my mom that the embassy had been overrun by demonstrators. At the time, actually, we weren't that concerned because it had happened before, but the Iranian government had always come and dispersed the crowds.
My grandma called my mom and said, "Barb, did you see the break-in of the Packer game? What was on the news?" My mom told her, "Yes, I saw that, and I'm sure everything's just fine." She was not worried at all. Maybe she was more of a Packer fan than I thought. I think she thought that something happening clear around the world, even if I was peripherally involved, really couldn't be all that dramatic at that time.
I was a young reporter for a big radio station, KMPC in Los Angeles.
Okay, Alex Payne, live on the air here at KMPC.
I was covering things that I thought were pretty big. School desegregation, fires, murders.
Everything is business as usual. Shopkeepers doing their business. You hear.
Then this Iran story came.
The Iranians had fought U.S. Marine Guards for 3 hours for control of the embassy.
Day after day, Iran became more important.
Some 60 Americans are now beginning their 6th day of captivity in Tehran.
So I asked if I could go over.
Career diplomat Richard Moorfield was among the captives, and back home, his son Ken sought to maintain any connection he could.
One of the things that I did to sort of keep in touch with my dad was I used to record NFL games on the radio on audio cassette tapes that I would send to him. The first Sunday after the embassy fell, I went to my mom and said, "Should I go ahead and record?" And she said, "Yeah, because we wouldn't want to have him miss a game, you know."
Touchdown, listen to this crowd, listen to it.
When I first got to Iran, I arrived at the airport and saw it festooned with posters of Khomeini and "Death to America, Down with America." And young kids, teenagers with AK-47s or whatever, everyone seemed to have a gun. I thought, how is it that I am here, safe, and somewhere out there, there are hostages, Americans just like me, that are captive? It just didn't make sense to me.
At the embassy's heated perimeter, Payne found common ground with those Iranian students who had studied in the United States.
During those conversations, we would talk about sports, which surprised me. Many of them liked American sports. And being in the football season, football was a topic.
There are many people in Iran that watch American football for the mere fact that a lot of them came here, got education, and went back to Iran.
The main embassy building, a once vibrant symbol of U.S. order and power, was now a darkened fortress guarded by armed militants and surrounded by screaming protesters. Inside, those who weren't in solitary were confined to tiny, dim rooms.
At the very beginning, everybody was scared of everybody because they held shotguns at each one of us.
They were brutal with beating, running into walls, or you blindfolded, or let you go down the stairs blindfolded.
Some of them were interrogated very intensely. A number of the hostages were herded up against the wall in a basement and put through a mock execution.
For the prisoners, reality was sometimes as bad as their loved ones feared. With Alex Payne on the ground in Tehran Hostages' families had a tangible connection to the embassy.
Right now I have Alex Payne, our special correspondent in Tehran, on the telephone.
Information about the hostages' day-to-day activities became a focal point of Payne's reporting.
We knew when Alex was going to call, and nobody took the telephones when he was going to call, because we didn't want anything to interrupt that. That was the major story of the day, despite anything else going on.
The embassy is guarded constantly by Revolutionary Guards, the Pasdaran.
Some of the radio stations put the wives of the hostages or family members on the phone with me. And of course they'd say, can you tell me about my loved one? If I send you a letter, can you give it to them? People were sending me letters at the hotel, and I was just delivering a letter or two to the militants, passing it along.
For homesick captives desperate for any link to the lives they knew, the messages had a profound impact.
Here you were, just in your same clothes. They hadn't taken a shower. All of a sudden, they put us into this room, put the bag of mail in the middle of the room. And we're all like shocked, like, what is this? And of course, you see this mail and you're kind of like, no information had been given to us about what was happening at home. So you went at it. It's like, piranhas into a meat.
It was one of those things that we certainly appreciated, knowing that people were thinking about us. Even I, being as young as I was, I knew the significance of that.
As the days mounted, so too did Iran's image problems. With a growing outcry against hostage-taking, the ruling regime took action.
There was a notice. Copies were handed to various journalists saying the government of Iran has decided you are no longer permitted to be in the country. You must leave immediately. Failure to leave will be considered a serious offense.
I thought, oh my goodness, this is the biggest story, and now they want to kick us out? I was thinking, how can I stay? How can I stay? I thought about a visit at Christmas time by some clergymen who said the hostages talked about football and how much they miss football.
We were asked not to discuss political matters, so they discussed football. They were quite surprised to know that Tampa Bay was in the running.
I put that together with my previous conversations about the militants liking football. The Super Bowl was after the deadline when we were supposed to leave. I thought, what if I could get them the Super Bowl? I could stay later because I had to record the Super Bowl.
It is now day 75 of captivity for the hostages in Tehran.
After the first part of the year, we were allowed to talk to each other, still tied up, but allowed to talk to each other, and we were always talking about sports and football. Certainly we knew the Super Bowl was coming up.
Super Bowl 14, pitting the defending champion Pittsburgh Steelers against the Los Angeles Rams, would be played on January 20th, 1980, at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and broadcast by Alex Payne's station, KMPC. All American journalists were ordered to leave Iran, but Alex Payne had a plan.
I went to the militants and I said, how would you like to listen to the Super Bowl? And they said, oh yeah, that's great. How do you get it? I said, my station carries the Super Bowl. He said, okay, if you can get it, we'd like it. I said, well, will you play it for the hostages? That's my condition. If you get the Super Bowl, yes, we'll play it, because we want to hear it too. Now I have to go to the Ministry of National Guidance, who gave the order to leave. So, well, you have to leave. I said, but they told me that they want to hear the Super Bowl, and they said that I could stay. You want me to go back and tell them that you said no? He thought about it for a few seconds. He said, okay, you can stay, but as soon as the Super Bowl is over, you have to leave.
Alex Payne in Tehran for News at 10.
That night, I went to bed early, knowing that the game was going to be played in the middle of the night in Tehran. I remember falling asleep because I was awakened by my station. And we did a test, and I had them send some voices over so I could record it.
Two survivors, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Los Angeles Rams.
I remember sitting in my underwear on a chair, pulled up to this little coffee table, have my cassette ready, knowing that whatever I heard hopefully the hostages would hear.
I showed up at the Rose Bowl, and that's the first I knew that there was going to be an attempt to get the broadcast to the hostages.
By special arrangement, this broadcast will be heard by the hostages held in the American Embassy in Iran, and we hope that listening to this broadcast will give you some small temporary link with home. You are in our thoughts and prayers constantly.
The fact that we brought a little bit of sunshine to a gloomy situation, it was a motivation for us.
Bradshaw coming back to pass. Franco Harris who gets us the bench.
I really tried to be precise about how I was describing the game.
Call goes to McCutcheon, option pass, he throws downfield, leaping grab, touchdown, Ron Smith!
And I hope that with respect to the hostages, any description transported them for a moment
under pressure
to mentally be there and enjoy the game as if they were watching it themselves.
5-yard line. Bradshaw back to pass. Moves up in the pocket.
Bradshaw cranks up and he throws a 73-yard touchdown pass to John Stallworth.
Going all the way is Stallworth at the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, and it's a touchdown.
I had just called, in my mind, the dream catch for every receiver that's ever played the game.
And the Steelers fire right back.
For the Los Angeles Rams, who have had to battle from behind, they're trying to do it one more time.
Intercepted by the Steelers. Lambert at the 15, the 20. It's all over in Pasadena. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the champions of the National Football League for the second straight year.
I got the tapes, got in a taxi, and went over to the embassy. And I'm holding them outside the gate. And I said, you promised you would play them for the hostages. And I remember slipping them through the gates, but holding on to them, making sure that he said yes. He said yes, and I let go, and he took the tapes and said, I will make sure that the hostages hear them. And he says, some of us will too.
The tapes ultimately landed in a room shared by one civilian and two Marines.
The Rose Bowl is packed,
Including Sergeant Rocky Sickman, who described the scene in his diary.
Another day gone by and another to start. Bill and I are lying on our mattress listening to Super Bowl 14. Just heard the game announcer tell the listeners that the game would be recorded and then heard by the 50 hostages in Iran. It's really a great feeling knowing we're not forgotten over here.
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Listening to something that you love so much, bringing back memories and how wonderful it would have been to be at home with your family, watching the game, eating a wonderful food,
deep for Swan.
drinking a Budweiser.
Touchdown, Bradshaw to Swan.
I felt as a human that I was trying to do something little as giving a tape of a football game that would help them survive.
This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
The 100th day of captivity for 50 Americans in Tehran.
I haven't heard from my family in over 2 months. Only twice since this has started.
People have asked me many times how I made it through the time in captivity. I tell people I often would lay with my eyes closed and think about being somewhere else. Sports. For me, the Green Bay Packers.
First thing you did in a cell as a prisoner was search under anything, just to see if anything was left or any messages. Sporting news, a lot of times it was left behind in another cell.
I remember devouring that every time we got it.
Sporting news was considered by the Iranians to be free of any news content. So they would pore over these reports about the football season, first of all, to see how their teams were doing, but at the same time looking for clues about what was happening in the United States.
I used to read the sporting news to read the statistics. It was an escape to reality instead of from reality. It was something that I could get engrossed in and forget what was going on to me. Knowing that Lawrence McCutcheon gained 131 yards in a game for the Rams made it seem like more of a reality. So that helped.
It was actually in that publication that we learned about the rescue mission.
Today, 8 men dead, their bodies left in an Iranian desert.
I went out to the crash site to see the blackened sand from the crash and fire of the plane and the helicopters. These are dead Americans who tried to do a noble thing. Was really heart-wrenching.
Now, this was a Hail Mary, a desperate attempt to try to do something against the odds. And to do that, you had to have skill and training and luck. The luck simply didn't hold.
It was my decision to attempt the rescue operation. The responsibility is fully my own.
I think that Carter would agree with me on this. It certainly was the worst day of my life.
I was with Carter when we got that news, and he turned profoundly ashen white. That's the nightmare that he'd had, that Americans would lose their lives.
It was hard not to see it every day and think about it in the context of the families that were involved and how they felt about it.
The Oakland Raider offense led by Jim Plunkett.
Every day you saw something new on the hostage situation, the failed attempt to rescue them.
The mission to rescue the hostages failed.
First down, Plunkett.
Visions of them being blindfolded and led around, sitting on the floor.
Let's see how the offense has chosen to attack them here.
People around the country tying yellow ribbons to their trees at home.
I think my biggest fear when my dad was gone and there wasn't communication was that it would just go on forever. Actually, I mean, I became a little bit more of a sports fan while he was there, because it was one of the few things that I could do that would just take my mind off of worst case scenario.
If the 1980 football season was an outlet for some, in Philadelphia, it was a source of optimism, as the Eagles looked like legitimate contenders.
In Philadelphia, the Eagles stood like barbarians at the gates of Rome.
The Eagles by 1980 were a team that had been built by Dick Vermeil over a period of 5 years.
Get to him, Leroy. You're going to have to be quicker than that.
Gilbert Montgomery was a running back. We had Harold Carmichael, Charlie Smith, had a good offensive line. We had a really tough football team.
The Eagles won 11 of their first 12 games, led by a disciplined defense and quarterback Ron Jaworski.
I really liked his competitive spirit, his enthusiasm and passion for the game. And he was tough. He had a very, very strong arm, and I thought if we did a real good job of coaching him, and I didn't screw up myself, he could take us to a Super Bowl.
We had a heck of a football team. The leadership we had from Dick Vermeil and that work ethic and that mentality that we had, that we're going to outwork everybody. We were intense and worked hard.
Philadelphia Eagles are in the Super Bowl.
Across the country, Oakland was at a crossroads. After winning a Super Bowl 4 years before, the aging Raiders had missed the playoffs in 2 consecutive seasons.
80 was kind of a rebuilding year. There were a lot of players that were on their last leg.
Quarterback Jim Plunkett epitomized their decline. The former Heisman Trophy winner and #1 draft pick found himself relegated to the bench.
Jim started out as a #2 quarterback. We traded Stabler for Pastorini, a starter for a starter, so we automatically put Pastorini as a starter.
All of a sudden, you find yourself on the bench, and you wonder why.
Jim, you've attained the goal of every college football player, winning this Heisman Trophy.
Are my skills fading? Am I not the player I used to be? Those doubts creep into you.
We went 2-3. There were rumors that I was going to get fired, and they were probably pretty close to being true.
It was the 5th game of the season. We were playing Kansas City at home. Midway during the second quarter, Pastorini got hit and he broke his leg. And so Jim Plunkett came in.
Plunkett to throw. Touchdown!
Jim takes us on an unbelievable run.
Touchdown, Oakland!
We end up winning the division. We go 11-5. We are the first wild card team to go to the Super Bowl.
The total resurgence of the silver and black. New Orleans, here come the Raiders.
Plunkett's return and the Eagles' conquest of the NFC set up the showdown for Super Bowl 15. On November 4th, 1980, football again ceded the spotlight to politics. Ronald Reagan was elected president on the one-year anniversary of the embassy takeover. Behind the scenes, the Carter administration was working relentlessly to negotiate the hostages' release, hopefully in time for Christmas.
The hostility toward the United States, which had focused on Jimmy Carter, was the fundamental motivation in continuing to hold hostages until Jimmy Carter left office. So Carter was defeated in November of 1980, and negotiating began in earnest with the United States government.
I remember being led down into this big room. They took the blindfold off, and they said, okay, go pick out your shoes. And in this big room, they had all of our shoes that they had taken from us in November of 1979. And I went out there, and I found my combat boots. Still had my name stamped in them, put them on. That's when I knew that we were going home.
There seemed to be the promise of freedom.
Talks with Iran were progressing, and word began to circulate that the hostages' release was imminent.
The day that they were released was a significant day to begin with. It was the inauguration day. And we said, this is going to be quite a day, because it was pretty clear that it was going to happen that day.
They put my blindfold on, I just took it back off, and then they pulled me back off the bus, and they go, well, you're going to stay. I'm going, no, I'm not. You can threaten me all you want at this point. I know I'm going home.
I actually had to walk up the stairs of the airplane. I think I got up those stairs in about 2 leaps. Each of us came through the doorway of the airplane. We saw other Americans on the plane. We had tears running down our cheeks. We were smiling. We were hugging one another.
We get to the end of the runway. The pilot starts accelerating, and the plane starts shaking, and all of a sudden it comes back down to an idle. And it's like for 444 days. I mean, I've got all my fingers, I've got my toes, but nobody will ever know what they did in screwing with us. Now it's the last day, the last minute, and we figure they're screwing with us one last time.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
Reagan took the oath of office, and within a minute after that, the plane took off.
The plane starts coming up. Nobody's saying a word. You're just sitting there. I mean, I know I had my eyes closed. My knuckles were white, just holding on, thinking that there's a bomb on the plane or a heat-seeking missile. I don't know how long it was until we hit the Turkish airspace and 2 fighters were escorting us, and we came unglued.
I remember waiting for the plane to fly in, and you just had goosebumps thinking that on that plane, the Americans are coming home. After all this time, after all the ups and downs of the story, after all the hardships and the misery they suffered.
We got there very early in the morning. There's, thousands of people with signs, welcome home. And you have no understanding that people, you knew that people were praying for you, but you didn't know that extent.
When I first saw my dad, my biggest emotion was relief. It didn't seem real until I could see him, until I could touch him, until he was there.
Thanks. Oh, thank you so much for what you've done.
I just can't describe the moment.
What you did for us. Thank you, Alex. Sure, so glad to see you alive. It's good to be home. God bless Americans, man. They did it for us. We felt them every moment. And thanks to you, we got the message.
It's something I'll never forget.
After 444 days in captivity, the 52 Americans were headed home, to be reunited with their families as honored guests at West Point's Thayer Hotel.
I think everybody in America was glued to the TV to see them walking off the plane.
It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. The fact that just 4 or 5 days prior, the hostages had been released, everybody was coming home.
Amid the jubilant homecoming, the Eagles and Raiders traveled to New Orleans. It would be a Super Bowl 15 showdown at the Superdome, now adorned in a yellow ribbon of its own.
As we're driving into the parking area, I looked up and saw this huge bow on this huge dome.
When we got in the locker room, we all had the yellow sticker on our helmet. That was very meaningful going into the game. We were playing for two things: the return of our people from being in a hostage situation and the Super Bowl. So as a team, we were very committed and excited about those two events.
When we got to West Point, I don't know, it was 20 miles or something, and the entire route was packed with people with yellow ribbons and signs.
I remember being at West Point and the Super Bowl is coming on, and I'm in my room and I'm torn. I'm literally torn between, do I want to stay in my room and watch the Super Bowl or get dressed, go downstairs and party with my family?
My boss and I wanted to watch the Super Bowl. And so we got a 6-pack of beer and went up to his room, and it was surreal, to say the least.
It was on the TV down in the bar, and I remember just being able to reconnect again with American life. It's one of those things, you know, you're back home again.
We ask you to please rise for a moment of thanks for the safe return home of the former hostages.
You know, I've always been respectful of the national anthem, but now I think back, it makes me get a little bit, choke up a little bit.
When we got out of captivity, we were at the pinnacle of emotion. Everyone in the U.S. knew who we were. And the Super Bowl epitomizes the absolute highest pinnacle of achievement for these players.
And Super Bowl 15 is upon us.
In a Super Bowl that reflected the prevailing spirit of redemption, the quarterback who nearly quit the game had the game of his life.
I dropped back, protection was good. The linebacker stepped in, filled in the hole, and that left Cliff Branch wide open.
Steps up, he looks, over the middle, he's got it, it's caught by Cliff Branch, touchdown Raiders!
You could see the confidence, not just in him, but in the team. You could feel it.
Raiders come up to third, and we're just about 4 now. The ball at their own 20.
We were about to sack Plunkett, and he's broken outside the pocket. So he throws this little floater, and I kind of go back 2 steps, and I can feel it's like the ball goes zoop. Kenny King catches it, and he is going. There ain't nobody back there.
Plunkett was at his best form. It's kind of like watching some guys just finding their rhythm. I mean, he was just right on it.
Silver and black football is king of the hill in the National Football League. Crescendo of Raider fans beginning to rise.
Jim Plunkett's 3 touchdown passes helped the Raiders become the first wild card team ever to win the Super Bowl. That performance inspired freed hostage Don Holman to pick up the phone.
I called the operator and I'm going, can you put me through to the locker room for the Super Bowl? So, oh yeah, I think I can do that. And so next thing I know, hey guys, hey, this is Jim Plunkett. And I'm going, hey, this is Don Holman. He goes, huh? I'm one of the hostages. I said, I'm just calling to congratulate you. He said, well, we played this game for you, congratulations. And I'm congratulating him, because he's got a Super Bowl ring. That's pretty important stuff.
Here they are, hostages in a foreign country, and they think about me as a person, me as a football player. I inspired them in some way. That's a great feeling.
The
this was our finest hour. This was the finest hour in the history of the Oakland Raiders. And we want to welcome back the hostages to the United States. And the great athletes. You were magnificent out there today.
Football was the avenue in which a lot of people who longed to be connected, that was something they could do. I can't go to Iran, I can't go to Washington and invoke foreign policy, but football was a national stage through which people could express their support. I'm always grateful for that.
52 Americans received strength through reminders of home and gave something even more powerful in return.
Until you've had that taken away from you, that freedom of being able to watch football, just toss a football, just walking outside and just being locked in a room, do you understand how precious freedom is?
So all of a sudden you see all this patriotism, and people shaking your hands, and it's overwhelming because you're going, I didn't do anything other than survive.
I think they're heroes. They persevered, but more than that, they really taught us a higher level of citizenship, of public service. I think the whole world was proud of them.
My feelings, I don't know if I'll ever be able to explain how I feel about you people. I just feel so overwhelmed. And you guys, everyone today, it's the happiest day of my life, and you just overjoyed. I love you all. Love you all.